Stephen Curry was known not just as a basketball superstar, but as a beacon of kindness and humility. Amid his demanding schedule of games, practices, and media appearances, he made it a personal mission to visit hospitals and connect with the children facing severe illnesses. These visits weren't obligations for him. They were heartfelt moments where he could offer hope and joy to those in need. On a cloudy afternoon in Oakland, he arrived at a local children's hospital, accompanied by just a few staff members and carrying his signature warm smile. He was wearing only a grey tracksuit and simple sneakers. The hospital hallways buzzed with quiet excitement as words spread among the staff and patients that the beloved Golden State Warriors player was there. For many children, Stephen was not just a basketball player, but a symbol of resilience, hard work, and perseverance. He wasn't there to give grand speeches or bask in admiration. He was there to share his time, a rare commodity for someone of his stature. He was greeted by nurses and doctors with genuine gratitude for his tireless efforts when making his way to the pediatric ward, where he would meet children whose lives were marked by battles most adults couldn't fathom. In one of the brightly decorated rooms, a frail 10-year-old girl named Emily lay in bed. Her room was filled with small mementos of her favorite team, posters, and a tiny Warriors flag taped to the wall. Emily had been a lifelong fan of Stephen, watching his games from her hospital bed and finding courage in his determination on the court. Despite her condition, which had weakened her to the point where even speaking was an effort, Emily's eyes lit up whenever his name was mentioned. When Stephen walked into her room, the air seemed to shift. Emily's parents stood by her bedside, their faces a mixture of hope and sorrow, knowing their time with their daughter was slipping away. "Hello, family," he said softly, his voice filled with warmth. Stephen approached quietly beside Emily's bed, his presence calm and reassuring. Her eyes widened slightly, and she mustered a faint smile. For a moment, it was as if the weight of her illness lifted, replaced by the pure joy of meeting her hero. "What is your name?" Stephen asked softly, his gaze fixed on her bright eyes. Emily looked up, hesitated, and then whispered, "Emily." "Shh." Stephen smiled as if he had recognized something important in the name. "Emily," and he repeated, "That's a beautiful name. I'm glad to meet you." Stephen noticed the little details around the room. The posters, the jersey, and even a basketball sitting on the shelf. "I see you're a pretty big fan," and he said, chuckling gently. Emily's lips curved into a fragile smile, and she nodded ever so slightly. The interaction was simple, yet profoundly moving. Stephen wasn't just a celebrity to Emily. He represented hope in a time of despair. Stephen sensed the fragility in Emily's presence, not just in her tiny frame, but in the unspoken pain that filled the room. He didn't rush the moment or fill it with empty words. Instead, he pulled up a chair and sat beside her, as though he had all the time in the world. Her parents watched quietly from a corner, their eyes glistening with gratitude. This wasn't just an interaction with a celebrity for them. It was a chance for their daughter to experience a moment of pure joy in what they knew could be her final days. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper, but Stephen leaned in close to hear her every word. She spoke haltingly about her love for basketball, how she'd cheer whenever he made a three-pointer, and how she dreamed of playing one day if she could get better. Her words were simple but carried the weight of a child trying to hold on to hope despite knowing her body was failing. Emily's faint smile grew a little wider, and her parents exchanged a glance, their gratitude for Stephen's kindness apparent in their tear-filled eyes. As the conversation continued, Stephen shared light-hearted stories about his time on the court including a few playful mishaps that made Emily giggle softly. The sound of her laughter, though faint, was like a balm to everyone in the room. Even the nurses passing by paused to soak in the rare moment of joy emanating from Emily's room. Then, Stephen noticed a small, hand-drawn picture taped to the wall. It was a crayon sketch of him in his warrior's jersey with the words "Never Give Up" written in shaky handwriting above his head. Emily's parents explained that she had drawn it during one of her better days, inspired by Stephen's resilience and unwavering positivity. He stared at the drawing for a moment, visibly moved, before turning back to Emily. "You know, the picture is beautiful," he said, seeing her gaze. "Do you like it? I give it to you." Emily looked up at the painting and said softly. He nodded. "This drawing is going to be my new good luck charm. I'll think of it every time I'm out there playing. It's a reminder to always keep fighting, no matter what." Emily's eyes shimmered, and though she was too weak to respond, the look on her face said more than words ever could. At that moment, the room seemed to hold something sacred, a connection that transcended fame, illness, and the fleeting nature of life. Stephen wasn't just a basketball player visiting a fan. He was a source of comfort, courage, and a reminder that even in the face of immense pain, human kindness could shine through like a beacon of light. As he finished speaking, Stephen looked around the room and found the basketball. He took the ball and walked back to Emily's bedside. He sat down to sign it and wrote his wishes for Emily. He gently placed the basketball in Emily's hand. "This is a gift from me, to always remind you that no matter what, you are a champion in my heart." Emily looked at the basketball. Her eyes lit up, and a faint but hopeful smile appeared on her face. Even though her health was failing, this moment, the moment of feeling love and appreciation, was something she would carry with her in her heart. The soft hum of the machines in the corner provided a constant reminder of the fragility of the moment. Yet Emily's parents, despite their grief, seemed comforted by Stephen's presence. They stood in the corner of the room, their eyes never straying too far from their daughter, as if to ensure that every second with her was filled with love and hope. After a few more moments of light-hearted conversation and laughter, small victories in the face of Emily's challenging reality, Stephen noticed the energy in the room begin to shift. Emily's laughter began to subside, replaced by a noticeable weariness. She tried to keep her eyes open, but they fluttered closed with increasing frequency. Stephen sat down next to her bed, not wanting to let the room fall into a heavy silence, but aware that time was moving on. It was then that he noticed the tiny details of her hospital room. The walls, adorned with her art, offered glimpses into her thoughts and dreams. Colorful hearts, stick figures shooting basketballs, and words of encouragement. Each piece of art, each colorful mark on the walls, was more than just decoration. It was a testament to the way she had fought not only against illness, but for every moment of joy and normalcy she could seize. Stephen reached up and touched one of the drawings of a basketball hoop, where Emily had painstakingly colored in every detail. He admired it for a moment before saying, "You've got some serious game, Emily. I've played in a lot of areas, but I've never seen a court quite like this one. You've got the heart of a champion." Shh! Emily's mother gave a soft laugh, her voice thick with emotion. She says it's the court she'll play on when she gets better, the one where nothing's impossible. Shh! Stephen smiled at Emily, who was now trying her hardest to stay awake. "Well, then I'll be ready for that game. You'll see me there." This simple promise seemed to energize her. Her fingers, still clinging to the basketball, tightened slightly. Her lips curled into a faint smile, and even her eyes seemed to glimmer. Her father stepped forward again, this time holding a small photo album in his hands. This was her team. Before all of this, he said softly, she was the point guard, always calling the shots, leading everyone. Shh! Stephen glanced at the photos, taking in the faces of the young teammates, their smiles radiating the same confidence that Emily had shown in their short conversation. He felt an overwhelming sense of admiration. I can see that. You've been the leader, haven't you? And he asked Emily, who nodded slowly. That's what champions do, right? She whispered. Stephen nodded with conviction. Exactly. You've been leading your team the whole time, even in ways no one else could see. The moment hung in the air, filled with a shared understanding. It wasn't about the diagnosis or the hospital room. It was about the person Emily was. The person she always had been and would continue to be no matter what. As the conversation slowed, Stephen leaned in closer to Emily, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You've already won every game that matters. You know that, right? Shh! She smiled again, just a flicker of her usual bright self, and squeezed his hand. Her breathing was becoming slower, but there was something peaceful about it, as though she was accepting it, embracing the love that surrounded her. Keep shining, Emily. You make this world brighter just by doing so. Stephen knew that it was time to say goodbye, but in his heart, he also knew that Emily's story would live on in the people she had touched. Emily had given him something that he would carry with him forever. The reminder that true strength isn't measured by how long we fight, but by how we face the inevitable with courage, grace, and love. As the room grew quieter, Stephen whispered, just one last thing to her. Hey, Chomp, he whispered softly, knowing how much she appreciated hearing that familiar nickname. You're a fighter, you know that? You've already won so much more than anyone can even begin to understand. And Emily sees him, a faint smile curving her lips, as if the words had given her a much-needed boost of energy. There was a powerful determination in her gaze. She tried to speak, but her voice came out in a weak, strained whisper. I've always wanted to meet you, she mumbled, her breath shallow but steady. Despite her frailty, there was a fire in her spirit that hadn't yet dimmed. It was the same fire he had seen in countless other athletes, but it was sharper now, tinged with the understanding that she was in a race that no one could win but herself. She wasn't battling against others. She was battling for herself, for every moment of joy she could wring from the world, for every smile, every laugh, every second of her life that still belonged to her. Stephen knelt beside her bed, lowering himself to her level. He reached out, gently taking her hand, noticing how small and fragile it felt in his own. Her fingers gripped his weakly, but with enough determination that he could feel her resolve. I'm honored, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You are a person strong. Can I hold you? Her smile widened just a little. She nodded, and for a fleeting moment, it was as if the burden of illness lifted from her face. There was a shift in the atmosphere. As Emily's body began to relax, her grip loosening around the ball, her father gently took the ball from her hands and placed it beside her on the bed. Then, Stephen and Emily gave each other a warm hug. Her parents, who had been quietly standing by, exchanged a glance. A silent conversation full of gratitude, his eyes filled with both love and sorrow. They had been with Emily through every battle, through every difficult step. But seeing her smile, seeing her engaged in this conversation with someone she had admired for so long, seemed to bring peace to them. The nurse entered the room, announcing that it was time to check on Emily. Stephen stood up and said softly, Goodbye, Emily. Get well soon. I'll be waiting for you, Emily said softly, but loud enough for him to hear. Goodbye, my hero. Emily's parents bowed thankfully, You've given our daughter a gift that we will never forget. Thank you for being there for her. You made her feel seen, and that's something we'll cherish forever." Stephen smiled, and their hands were gently placed on their shoulders. He paused for a moment, looking back one last time at the young girl who had touched his life in ways he couldn't yet put into words. Stephen quietly made his way to the door. The door clicked softly behind him, but the memory of that moment would stay with him forever. A reminder that sometimes the greatest victories are not those won on a court, but those that take place in the quietest of moments, when we choose to show up for one another, to listen, to care, and to love. Emily's incredible wasn't just her strength in the face of illness. It was her ability to connect with others, her ability to see beyond her struggle and reach out to someone who could offer just a little bit of comfort. It was the human spirit, unbroken, even in the hardest of times. And in that quiet hospital room, with Emily's hand in his, Stephen Curry had realized that true victory wasn't about the scoreboard. It was about making a difference in the lives of others, no matter how small or fleeting the moment might seem. Stephen Curry brought hope and joy to a young girl facing her final days. He did not come for attention or to receive anything in return, but simply as a sympathetic person, willing to listen and share. The moment he sat down by Emily's bedside, giving her not only his time but also his sincere care, showed that kindness does not require grand actions, just small gestures, but coming from the heart. Emily, despite her weak and painful circumstances, still carries within her the flame of resilience. Through Emily's eyes, we see optimism, a strong desire to live, and appreciation for the precious moments of life, things that we sometimes unintentionally forget in the hustle and bustle of life. The story of Stephen Curry and Emily is a beautiful picture of kindness, humility, and the power of deep human connections. It is not just a story about a famous basketball star, but also a testament to the fact that regardless of status, kindness is still the core of a person's value. You don't have to be famous or powerful to make a difference. Sometimes, just a smile, a word of encouragement, or a small but sincere action is enough to change someone's life. So, why don't we start today? Take action and spread kindness. Don't hesitate to open your heart, because a small action can leave a big mark. Leave a comment and let us know what you think. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe for more great videos. We'll see you there.